Hi, I'm Josh Spurrell from Spurrell and Associates Chartered Professional Accountants, and I'm here with Shadon Farasati today. And today we're talking about starting a business with sales immediately and the importance of that. Shadon, you've been in public practice for about 10 years now, and I believe you've been a designated accountant for 8 years, and you've been a manager here with Spurrell and Associates for 2 years. So thanks for being here today. And so I'd like to start off with a couple statistics about why sales are important immediately. CB Insights, what they did is they reviewed some essays from failed entrepreneurs. And the failed entrepreneurs gave a number of reasons of why the businesses didn't work out. But the number one reason that was offered, or the reason that was offered most commonly, was 42% of the entrepreneurs said there was no market for their product or service. The second most common reason was 29% of the entrepreneurs. They said that 29% said they ran out of cash. So 42% of them said that there's no market. 29% they ran out of cash, and 23% said that they just had the wrong team or couldn't find the right team. So those are the three most common reasons listed. Does that surprise you at all? No? Yeah. And I'd just like to, start off a quote with that. So, Peter Drucker wrote 39 different business books. He said, "Nothing happens until somebody sells something." And I'll just start off with the story of the client. And unfortunately, this is a story that I haven't just seen once, and you haven't just seen once, I know. But the story is, the client comes in and they have these huge goals. Often they're a little overly complex, and there's a lot of ideas floating around their head, and then you meet with that same client in the next year and they haven't sold anything. They're not off the ground yet, or their sales are very minimal. So Shadon, what do you think are the important questions to ask for these businesses starting out? So what are the questions that you think these business owners should be asking?
If a business owner wants to get out of the gate quickly, what should they focus on?
Well, I think they need to focus on their minimum viable product, is what I call it. So what that means is, what is the least amount of capital and the least amount of time that they can get to a point where they can actually start selling clients. And, we might want to say that, shouldn't they be doing market research? Market research is a little bit tough for entrepreneurs. Ultimately, the best market research is if you can sell, the market's accepting it. If you can research it, that means it might. So the quicker you can get to that point where you have a minimal viable product, the least amount of capital expenses, least amount of money that's come out of your pocket, and the least amount of time before you can actually start selling clients, I think that's the most important thing to focus on first.
Okay. What would you say to business owners who wants a perfect product?
It's the perfect product. They're probably thinking about it the wrong way. I mean, you and I know, even in the firm, we're always improving your processes. So really, business owners, they have to think about improving the product. It's something you do every day. You come into the business, you turn the lights on, you improve your product, you turn the lights off. You can't just improve your product at the beginning, set it and forget it and hope to work out. It's impossible because you just don't know all the variables yet until you actually get into the business of selling the product. You're really not going to understand what works, what doesn't work. So you have to shift your mindset from thinking that it needs to be perfect from the start to I need to be continually improving my product to make it relevant to the changing needs of customers.
Okay. For business owners who have no sales experience, where should they start?
So often I think they struggle with their sales, kind of their script or their process. It's a little too complex. So I think what they need to do is boil down their product and service into what I call a one sheet, an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that explains the process of what their product or service is offering, how it's delivered, what are the benefits, in the layman's terms possible. One sheet, whether this is a sheet that the customer actually sees or a sheet that's just used by yourself to refresh. This is the one piece of paper that benefits that says the benefits of your product and the value proposition to your prospective client. So I would start with that one sheet.
Okay. once they have that one sheet, what's the most important document they must have?
Well, I think the next most important document is really, they just need a contract. Like, you actually need a contract. What are you actually going to, get them to purchase? It's something that you can actually walk through in the sales process about, this is what we're trying to sell. This is how much it's going to cost. These are the terms with it. If you don't have that, you really can't even, you're not even in the position to actually approach a customer, because you really don't have anything to give them. So I think once you have the one sheet, then you have a prospective contract, and it might not be the contract that you finish with, but you need one sheet and a starting place of a contract, because that's what you need to approach a customer the first time.
What ways would you recommend approaching clients initially?
I would call it the hand-to-hand. You want to be reaching out by phone, networking events, direct messaging on social media. Initially, it's usually, there's usually not a huge advertising budget for small businesses. You have, at that point, you usually have more time than money. And most of the, the heavy hitting advertising initiatives, they cost more money. But initially starting out, you probably have more time. So I would be looking at networking. I would be looking at direct phone sales, just picking up the phone and calling your likely buyers. I'd be looking at direct messaging on social media, people already in your network. I think that's the best way to approach customers initially. And you can do that even if you're selling maybe you're a consultant selling HR, or even if you're running a small restaurant. You can reach out to people on social media and ask them to come into your restaurant. So this is not something that's limited to one type of business. It's virtually free. There are ways to reach out to your likely buyers for free. And I think that's the most important way to start.
Would you go after bigger or smaller clients at first?
I would encourage business owners to go after the smaller clients first. And I think one of the important parts about that is it takes longer to sell to business customers. There's usually more decision makers. They're usually more entrenched in the way that they're doing business. And we have to be aware that you're really not going to find out is it the product or service, or is it just the red tape in between yourself and the decision maker that's the barrier. So when you start with the smaller people, you're going to get to the yes or no quicker. And that kind of helps you with reason number 2 that business owners are listing for failing, is they run out of cash. So if you approach the bigger customers first, what's going to happen is you actually just won't, the sales cycle is longer. It might take a year to get in with a bigger customer, and it might take a month to get in with a smaller customer. So if you can get in with a smaller customer in a month, it might not be the type of revenue, type of profits you want to generate, but you start getting some cash flow. There's money coming into the bank. And remember, it's not just determining if there's a market for your product and service, but the other part of it is, are you going to run out of cash? And that sales cycle and the length of time before you actually start receiving any cash is smaller. So it's not that you wouldn't approach any bigger customers, but I would think your focus would be on the smaller ones first. Also, it can be nice that you don't mess up in front of the big guys if there's only so many in your market first, until you can have a little more time to perfect that sales process.
Okay. So once you have the buyer, what are the steps to closing that sale?
So I mean so once you have the prospect, generally next thing that you need is you need a meeting. You need an appointment. If you're operating a retail shop, that appointment is when they come into the store. But let's say your buyer never, it's not walk up traffic. You need to get an appointment. And I see too many entrepreneurs that just email back and forth, and email and phone call back and forth. Your first step is when you have a prospect, is get the appointment. That's step number 1. Really, most of the communication that happens before then, I've learned it's not nearly as effective as I thought it was. That getting that appointment, even if it's an online appointment, but a specific appointment with that likely buyer, that's step 1. And the next thing you have to do is really try to establish what their needs are. So they're, what's important to them, because you have your one sheet of all the different values that your product or service offers. But they might not need all of them. They might only have 2 or 3 of them that are actually important to them. Maybe you have 10 different benefits of your product, but there's really only 2 or 3 that are important to them. So the first part is, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and it's the first part is to learn more about them. You might want to give them a little bit of intro to yourself, just enough to get them talking and ask them questions about what they're looking for, what challenges they have. People are buying stuff generally to solve a problem. So what issues are they having and what benefits your product is going to have. So once we've established what their needs are, now you really want to start presenting to them your product, your service, your terms. Because once you have those needs in hand, I guess what you can do is you can tailor your delivery of the values and put emphasis on the things that are actually important to the person that you're selling to, because it won't always be the same. They might be focused on one particular value, and you can emphasize that one. But if you don't establish those needs first, you're kind of poking around at the dark, and you'll spend a lot of time on things that really aren't important to your buyer. And then the next part is you have to ask for the sale. It's one of the things is, think about it in terms of how many appointments you have and how many proposals you actually made. And I think that's forgotten about people, is that you're going to have to make a recommendation to your buyer, and this is what I believe we can do to help you with your issue. So you actually have to make a proposal. You have to walk them through that contract that we've already made out for them. And even if they don't buy it in the appointment or in a follow-up appointment, email it to them. There's a lot of great digital signature programs that are out there. If you ask for the sale and it's not the right time, then you can forward that out to your likely buyer, and they actually have something. I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make is assume someone is not interested. You don't really know. Sometimes you got a good hunch either way, but I've often been surprised about people who I think aren't interested and they're really interested. So don't put too much emphasis on how that meeting goes. You need to ask for the sale. Leave them with that contract as long as you're comfortable doing business with them. You have to ask, and you have to have a mechanism that they can actually say yes. So you have to ask for that sale.
What are common important steps that is missed?
They don't ask for the sale. That number one, lots of times people like to talk, and they will go through the values, and they'll understand their customer, and they'll talk about the values of their product or service, and then they don't actually present them a solution with a price and a dotted line for them to sign on. So the number one thing that they miss is they just simply don't ask for the sale. There's a number of ways to get that out there, but you'll never know if you don't ask for the sale.
What if the customer says no initially?
Well, it almost can be expected. Now, we said to focus on the minimal viable product or service. So if you focus on the minimal viable product and service, now you're at a bit of an advantage, because if they say no, you spent the least amount of money and the least amount of time to getting this, irrefutable market research. You're pitching your small customers, you're getting some sales out there. So if they say no and you've only gotten to your minimal viable product, now you can pivot. Now you haven't spent as much time. What the alternative is you've tried to go for the perfect product, and instead of taking 1 month or 2 months to get your minimal viable product to market, you've taken 1 year or 2 years in order to get your minimal viable product to market. Now at this point you've probably depleted your cash, and you've probably depleted your level of resolve. Business owners, they start giving up. It starts getting more frustrating. So if they say no initially, it's not necessarily the worst case scenario, because it's going to allow you to refine your product or services. You're going to get some feedback. So you're going to get some feedback into the sales process. You'll hear the objections that you're getting. You'll understand how to overcome these objections. And you're going to get some sales too. So once you start actually delivering on that product or service, now you're going to get some feedback from that too. And so you can refine your product based on actual sales versus on a hypothetical. So once you have that refined product, then you're updating that one sheet, and now that sale, you can build those refined processes into your initial sales pitch, and that's how you start to you make these incremental improvements over time that you get to a product or service that the customers are more likely to purchase.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks a lot, guys. So we look forward to seeing any comments or questions that you want in the comment section below, and we'll do our best to answer those in an upcoming show. Thanks very much.